to confess that when my kids were little, we ate a lot of boring pasta. It just seemed to be the quickest, easiest thing I could get on the table on busy weeknights. Now that they're older, I'm craving meals that are simple to make but full of flavor. And today I'm going to show you 3 of my favorite new creations. So first up, I'd like to show you a favorite salad recipe of mine. It's really simple, 3 main ingredients plus the dressing, but it's got so much going on. It consists of spinach and raspberries and a nice raspberry-based vinaigrette, and then the secret topping is the candied almonds that everyone goes crazy for. So to make those, we're going to start by melting some sugar in a saucepan. And you add just a little bit of water, and that helps with the melting process. So once that's melted, we're going to turn it down a little because you don't want your sugar to burn. You do have to stir it pretty often. And the great thing about this is you can make these almonds up to 2 weeks ahead and store them in a glass jar with a tight-fitting lid, for example. So we're just stirring until I can see that the liquid's taken on kind of a uniform color, and then I know that the sugar is fully incorporated with the water. And then we're going to add these slivered almonds. It's really not worth your while to try and cut them on your own. They're kind of tricky to cut, but you can buy bags of slivered almonds. This particular style is better than the sliced almonds because they seem to take on the sugar well without burning. So I can pretty well see the bottom of my saucepan now, so I know the sugar's almost dissolved. So in go the almonds. And I'm going to stir to make sure that they all get coated with the sugar mixture. And now it's just a bit of an exercise in patience. You need to keep stirring, and the water is going to evaporate from our mixture, and then the sugar will start to stick to the almonds and we'll lightly cook them. I'm paying close attention so I can turn the heat up just a little bit here. It takes just a few minutes for this to happen. Like I said, do it ahead of time, and then it speeds up your weeknight salad preparation. I call this a weeknight salad, but it's actually one of my go-to dinner party salads as well. You can see how things are bubbling nicely. The sugar syrup is really, really hot, so you want to make sure it doesn't splash you as it's cooking. These are just about finished. You can see they're getting golden brown. That's perfect. And we're going to spread them out on a sheet of parchment paper. Turn off our burner, and out they go onto parchment paper. Again, very, very hot, so be careful. There we go. And then you can just use 2 forks to kind of pull them apart and let them cool. And that's it. So next up, we're going to make our dressing. We've got raspberry vinegar in here, and it's got a delicious aroma. We're going to add some smoked paprika. It is so much more interesting than regular paprika. Well worth it to go and look for that. That's pretty much the only kind I use now. And again, we've got our friend Dijon for emulsification. You can use regular mustard, but it tends to be a bit too bright in terms of its flavor. A little bit of finely minced onion, again for some more flavor interest. Maple syrup, which I love for sweetener. And we'll give that a little stir. I'm actually going to give it a shake because I can see the Dijon is not quite mixed in. There we go. And now we're going to add in our oil. You have a choice here. I'm choosing olive oil just because I really like the extra bit of grassy flavor that you get from it. You can see this one is nice and green. You know, it's got a good strong flavor. Or you can use canola oil if you prefer, avocado oil, sunflower oil, really whatever you like. And again, shake it all up. And just like any vinaigrette, you can easily make this ahead of time, a couple of days ahead. If you do use olive oil and put it in the fridge, which you should do with a vinaigrette, it will solidify a little bit. You can just take it out of the fridge ahead of time and rest it in a bowl of warm water with the lid on, and the dressing will come back to room temperature very gently. So now it's time to assemble our salad. And what we're going to do is put the dressing on first so that we don't drown our raspberries and our almonds. You can see it's got a really nice color. That's from the smoked paprika. And don't add too much. You can always add a bit more, but if you overdo it, your greens will be kind of drowned. And it's a great idea to toss it gently, make sure that the leaves are evenly coated. I'm checking in the bottom to make sure there's not a puddle of dressing down there, and it looks great. And as I said, it's pretty simple. We're going to put the raspberries on top. You could use sliced strawberries as well. I've done this with quartered little tiny apricots, any fruit that you like. And it just adds so much more flavor and interest to the salad, not to mention, of course, the color in this case. Peaches would be another great thing, or nectarines. And we'll finish with our beautiful candied almonds. And there you can see it's a super fast weeknight salad that's dinner party worthy as well.
As a kid, my go-to item on takeout Chinese food menus was the little honey garlic spare ribs, and that flavor combination is still a favorite of mine today. You can cook this chicken in an Instant Pot, pressure cooker, or even a slow cooker, and use the great stand mixer trick I'm going to show you to shred it. Rice and stir-fried vegetables are great sides with this dish.
If you like making pulled pork, pulled chicken, or even shredded beef, I've got a great tip for you. Instead of pulling it apart with 2 forks, take that hot meat, cut it into small pieces, and put it in a stand mixer. Shreds it in under a minute, and it's fantastic. I'm excited to show you this recipe for shredded honey garlic chicken. It's such a delicious flavor profile, and one that I reached for all the time when I was a kid, especially at Chinese buffets. We're going to use the Instant Pot today to make it super speedy, but you could use a regular pressure cooker, a slow cooker, or even cook it in a conventional pot on the stove. I'm going to start by adding some canola oil to my Instant Pot, just enough to cover the bottom, and then a little bit of sesame oil for an extra flavor kick. What I like about making this recipe in an Instant Pot is that I can saute it right in the pot to help bring flavor out of the chicken before we set it to pressure cook. I've got 3 huge boneless chicken thighs here. You could use smaller ones, you could use chicken breasts, really whatever you want, but the key is boneless. So it's in the pot now, and we're just going to let it come up to temperature on the saute function. And once it's crisped up, we'll flip it, and then we'll add our special ingredients. Okay, we've flipped our chicken. It's looking great, just getting very lightly seared in the Instant Pot. And now we're going to add some great ingredients to cook it in. We'll start with just a little bit of brown sugar, some orange juice, a little bit of honey. Not too much, since we're going to be adding more honey in our sauce. Some soy sauce, again for that authentic flavor profile. Chinese 5-spice powder, which you can find in many supermarkets now, and it's really wonderful. It's a great combination. And last but not least, a little bit of water, because we want the chicken to come out super tender after it cooks. So I'm just going to give that a little stir here with the tongs to make sure all the ingredients are blended, and I'm going to put the lid back on and set it to cook on the poultry setting, which takes about 15 minutes under pressure. There we go, and we'll slide that back out of the way while the chicken does its thing. While the chicken is cooking, we're going to make the delicious honey garlic sauce to go with it. I like having all these robotic things in the kitchen. It makes great sounds all the time. So here we go, more beeping for our sauce. So this honey garlic sauce is really delicious. We're going to start with just a little bit of oil. Here we are. And I've got ginger and garlic pureed up. I actually make big batches of that. If you see here that they're in lumps, that's because they were frozen, and I just freeze them in a Ziploc bag and crack a piece off every time I need some. So that will thaw quickly on our hot burner here. And also more water to give the sauce the consistency that we want. And soy sauce again. If you're not familiar with honey garlic sauce, it's that nice thick dark brown sauce you often see on things like little Chinese spare ribs at classic Canadian Chinese buffets and so on. It's a great sauce as well for things like meatballs, and it's great for pork tenderloin, but I just really love it in this chicken preparation. So we're just gonna give it a little more heat. We wanna thaw our garlic and cook it a little bit. Garlic and ginger combo. See it starting to come apart now, that's great. And our Instant Pot is starting to make its sizzling noise, which means the pressure is coming up. If you were to cook the chicken in a regular pot on the stove, you'd probably want it to cook for about 45 minutes to an hour, and just check to make sure that the moisture level is maintained. You want the chicken not quite covered, but certainly not getting dry. And in a slow cooker, it would probably be 4 to 6 hours. All right, now we're gonna add our honey, and we have more than we did for the chicken itself because of course this is honey garlic sauce. Scrape it all out. And I always like to add a little bit of heat, so again, my favorite chili garlic paste or sriracha is my go-to. Not too much. We're trying to make this sort of a family-friendly amount of heat, but if your family is fans of heat, then by all means add some more. And we're just gonna let this come to a boil, and then we're gonna add a mixture of water and cornstarch to thicken it up so that it will nicely coat the chicken. All right, we've got it coming to a boil now. In goes our cornstarch and water. And you'll want to give that a stir quickly. And as soon as it kind of becomes clear again, then you know the cornstarch has cooked in, and you can take it off the heat. And it should have the consistency of kind of ketchup or jam or something. You just want it to be thick, but not too thick. There we go. So now we're going to take it off the heat, and we're just going to wait for our chicken to finish cooking, and then we'll assemble the dish. Okay, let's open the Instant Pot and see how our chicken looks. See the robot noises? I just love it. I'm going to lift the liner out. It's a little bit warm. And you can see it's all in there in the liquid. Now we're going to shred it in the stand mixer, and like I said, you can do it with 2 forks and just pull it apart on a cutting board, but this is just the best way ever. There is a fair bit of liquid in the pot, which I will drain off. I'm going to leave just a bit in to mix with our honey garlic sauce. You can see how tender the chicken is. It's falling apart as I pull it out. Amazing that it can be that tender in such a short cooking time. That's the beauty of the Instant Pot for sure. Okay, so we'll crank it up and turn it on, and it's just coming completely apart into shreds while we stand here. It's great. I'll let it go for about another 15 seconds. And we're done. Okay, and now we're going to take the liner, as I mentioned, and just drain out the extra liquid. All right, we've got our shredded chicken here, and now we're just going to transfer it back to the Instant Pot liner with just a little bit of liquid left from our cooking. If you like your pulled meats with a lot of sauce, you can leave in a bit more liquid. It's really up to you. There we go. So you can see it's just in here in the bottom. And now we're going to add the lovely honey garlic sauce that we made before. So we're just going to drizzle that over top. Don't want to leave any behind. And then we're quickly going to put it back on the heat in the Instant Pot. And as you can imagine, it doesn't take long to get it hot because we just come out of the pressure cooking. And there we go. And we'll just stir it a little bit in the sauce. This is something that's super simple to make ahead of time, obviously, although it would come together quickly even if you did it from start to finish on a weeknight. The shredded meat also freezes really, really nicely. And I've used it for something like Chinese tacos, just to switch things up if we're wanting a change from regular style tacos. And we're just going to wait till it's bubbling a little bit. And I've got some cooked rice here. Again, as with most things, you can use your grain of choice. I think we're just about up to heat now. But it's nice to have something. The chicken by itself isn't quite a complete meal. You could also do some sauteed vegetables, bok choy or something like that would be really nice with this. Okay, I think we're all up to heat now. So we're just going to transfer the chicken. And then we'll go back in for a little bit more sauce with a spoon, trying to get the pieces that are really nicely shredded. Depending on your family's preference, you might want to leave it in larger pieces or leave it really small. And easiest way to get the sauce out is just to lift the liner out and go in with a spoon. And the sauce is really nice on top of your rice. So, so, so delicious. And as you may have realized, I love my garnishes, so we're going to put on some sesame seeds and some green onions. And our delicious, family-friendly, quick weeknight meal is ready.
Creamy homemade puddings, fancy ones are sometimes called Pota Creme or budino, are rich and satisfying, even in small quantities. This version is a snap to make, and as a bonus, you can freeze the little dishes if you prefer serving it as a delightful frozen custard instead. If you can't find salted caramel baking chips, use butterscotch or even dark chocolate ones instead for equally terrific treats.
No matter how fast your weeknight meal is, it's really important not to forget dessert, right? I know it's my family's often favorite part of the meal, no matter how delicious the first part is. So today I'm going to show you how to make a fancy kind of homemade pudding. It's called Pota Creme. Some people call it budino. I think that's the Italian name for it. Basically, I just call it simple and delicious. So we're going to start by heating some heavy cream in a saucepan. And you don't want the heat to be too hot because you don't want to scorch the cream. But the idea is you're going to heat it up and temper or partly cook your eggs before you join them together. So we're going to take 5 eggs and we're going to use just the yolks. You can save the whites to make meringues or whatever you like to use egg whites for, maybe add them to an omelet so they don't have to go to waste. And I don't have any magical secrets for separating eggs, I just do it the old-fashioned way. However, they will separate more easily if they're at room temperature. And if you forgot to take them out of the fridge, you can even put them in a bowl of lukewarm water for a couple of minutes before you go to separate them. And it doesn't matter if you have a little bit of white left in with the yolk, it won't affect the pudding at all. I've seen all kinds of gadgets for separating eggs, but really it's not that hard if you practice a little bit. And the only time it matters if you get the yolk in with the whites is if you are trying to make a meringue, because it won't whip properly if there's yolk in it. I always use large size eggs for my baking, as I find that most recipes are standardized for that. If you like to buy extra large, you may need to make an adjustment depending on the quantity of eggs. So in this case, I'm using 5 large eggs. I would probably use 4 if they were extra large, or 6 or even 7 if they were medium. And 1 more to go. There we go. Kind of feels like a juggling act when you do this. Okay. That out of the way, wipe the egg off my hands, and we'll just set the yolks, the whites aside, and I will be making meringues with these later because my family loves them. We're going to check on our cream. We want it to be steaming, but not boiling, so I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit because it's nearly there. And while we're waiting for that to be steaming, I'm just going to whisk the yolks a little bit. And then our plan is to add just a little bit of the cream mixture, or the cream at a time, to the eggs to temper them, as I said, or just to bring them up to heat. If you don't do that, the eggs will scramble in the pot and your pudding will be lumpy and not nearly as enjoyable. And Do the old finger check, not quite there yet, so we'll turn the heat up but keep a close eye on it. You could make this pudding with a cream of 10% or even 18%, but I figure it's a very small serving, so why not use whipping cream and just really enjoy it. As with the other recipes on today's show, you can also make this pudding ahead of time. It's good for about 48 hours in the fridge, or you could make it a week ahead and freeze it as long as it's tightly wrapped. So that's kind of a bonus as well. All right, we're just going to check on it again, the finger check. It's almost as warm as we need. Now the secret ingredient that makes this pudding so special is salted caramel baking chips. And if you're not familiar with these, you should look for them in your grocery store. They come in a blue package in the baking aisle, and they have an amazing flavor. But if you prefer, or if you can't find these, you could easily use butterscotch chips. Chocolate chips would be great. I really like the dark chocolate chips you can get today. Okay, I think our cream is steaming now. So we're going to pour just a little bit into the eggs at a time. When I take the pot off, the burner tells me, hey, the pot's off, in case I hadn't noticed. All right, we'll put the pot back on so the burner will stop talking to us. There we go. And we've got our eggs here mixed with our cream. And now we can put it back in with the remaining cream. And we're going to stir. You might be wondering why I'm not adding any sugar to this pudding, as is normal with a custard that you make in this way. That's because the salted caramel chips are so sweet on their own that it just doesn't need any extra sugar. So now that this is well mixed, we're just waiting for it to thicken just a little bit. That'll take about a minute. And then we're going to add our salted caramel baking chips. And as soon as they're melted, the pudding is done. It's that simple. You could probably do this in the microwave as well if you pay attention and take it out often to stir, but I find it's just really easy to watch it on the stove top. And a good way to tell if the custard is ready is if it coats a spoon, and we can see here that it's coating my spoon nicely. So now I know it's ready for me to add the chips. In they go, a little bit of a splash, and then we just have to stir it constantly until the chips have melted. And that takes about a minute or 90 seconds depending on how hot your pot is. Once we've got it all melted, then we're going to put it in our little serving dishes. If you didn't temper the eggs well enough and they did get a little bit lumpy, you can certainly strain the mixture through a little strainer into a measuring cup before you pour it into your little bowls. And in fact, we're even going to pour it back into the measuring cup we used in the beginning because it's simply a lot easier to fill the bowls that way. So you can tell if they're melted by pulling your spoon up, and you can see that I still have salted caramel chips that are unmelted, so I'm just going to keep on stirring. This is something that would be really fun to make with kids because it's very straightforward, it doesn't take too long, and as long as you're there to keep an eye that the cream doesn't get too hot, they can pretty much handle the whole thing on their own. They might have fun thinking about other things to add into the custard as well. You could put dried fruit in there. They could even have fun putting crunchy things in if they wanted to add some nuts or even some cereal. There's really anything you want you can put into this. The classic French or Italian versions are plain, but I think that you can always have fun in the kitchen and experiment, and maybe you'll come up with a great new combination. Okay, so it's just about melted now, and it's starting to boil, so I'm going to turn it down a bit. You could use this same base to make ice cream if you wanted to freeze this mixture either in an ice cream maker or just pour it into a metal pan and keep stirring it occasionally as it freezes. This is the same custard base that you would use. All right, I can see that it's all melted now. So as I said, we're going to transfer it into a glass measure. Use this one here because it's clean. Pour it in. It doesn't quite all fit, but we'll come back for round two. And then we've got these cute little bowls here that we're going to pour it into. And as I mentioned, they are small servings, so you don't need to feel guilty about having a sweet treat. There we go. Just wipe the edge there. I find I can typically get 6 or 8 servings from this recipe. Depending on the size of your bowls, you might have a few more or less than that. And again, this is so simple, but it's actually dinner party worthy. There we go, and we'll just get the rest of the mixture from the pot. And another way to add texture, if you wanted, you could just not melt the chips all the way, and as they cool, they would stay intact, and that could be kind of fun to have a little bit of crunch. You could also sprinkle crunchy things on top, like the candied almonds that we've made, or score bits. Just going to get a scraper to get the last little bit out for this serving. It's a little shy, but that's okay. All right, now we need to let it set in the fridge for just a few minutes. Well, more than a few minutes. It'll take a couple hours to set in the fridge. So we've taken our pudding out of the fridge and it's ready to be enjoyed. It's great on its own, but I always think, why not add a little bit more? So we've got a little bit of whipped cream here just for fun. And a little goes a long way. It's just more of a decoration. And then you can perch a couple of berries. These ones are pretty big. I think I'll just put 2 on. And all of a sudden you've got a delicious, elegant dessert that took just minutes to make. Now you've got some new ideas for a fast and flavorful weeknight meal that's sure to make everyone in the house really happy. This salad with the beautiful crunchy candied almonds and homemade dressing is delicious. We've got our honey garlic chicken and of course our salted caramel pudding for dessert. Enjoy!